Introduction to Mobile Photography by Issac Acosta. We are inundated in a world of apps, notifications, and sus individuals. For the most part, we are consumers of technology and its products. That needs to change. It is my hope that people, especially young people, transition to become creators instead of passive consumers. One way to do that is by using cell phones for photography. Photography is no longer limited to expensive camera owners. Many people have a decent camera right in their pockets and can start shooting right away. My experience with cell phone photography began with my trip to Athens, Greece in the spring of 2019. Prior to this trip, I would use a Canon XSI camera. I still own it, and it works great after 11 years of use. However, sometimes I felt uncomfortable carrying it in heavily crowded areas, not to mention that carrying a camera can get tiresome. After reading about cell phone cameras, I purchased an iPhone XS Max with 256 gigabyte storage. I left my poor Canon at home and took my new phone to Greece. After this trip, I was hooked on cell phone photography. Yes, there is a slight decrease in quality compared to a DSLR camera, but the convenience, ease of use, and features easily make an iPhone a great alternative. I printed some photos and was amazed at the quality of the prints. Soon after, I began reading more about cell phone photography and even developed a Saturday Academy on the subject at my school. The purpose of this post and future posts is to adapt a handout that I use in my Saturday Academy. I give complete credit to Brandon Greisley for posting the source of mobile photography tips on his blog, where you can find them, where you can find here. Photography tips. Rule of thirds. Take a look at this image on the left. What do you think the focus is? Where does your eye go to first when observing this photo? If you said the damaged lantern, you are correct. In photography, there is a phrase, "You have a good eye for photography." But what exactly does that mean? This phrase has to do with photo composition. Composition is how the elements of a photo are arranged and organized. A photographer who has a good eye takes photos that are arranged in a pleasing way and follow rules of compositions. One of those rules is called the rule of thirds. Now, before I continue, let me emphasize that these are rules, but not laws. Rules can be broken, and there is obvious room for innovation in photography. However, following rules of composition are essential for beginners. Master the rules, then you can innovate. The rule of thirds allows an observer to know what the focus is in a photo. This rule also allows the photographer to bring attention to a particular object or element in their photo. An observer should never have to guess what the focus is. If they have to, then your composition is off. Let me take you through the rule of thirds. You must imagine that your view has a 3 by 3 line grid, which divides your view into 9 equal parts. These lines will be your composition guide. Your focus must be at the intersection of the lines on the grid. This will result in aesthetically pleasing composition. In other words, your photos will look better. For example, look at the image to the right. The focus is a dragon fountain, and the object is located at the intersection of those lines. The image on the left is what I consider to be okay composition. The focus is still within the margins of the intersecting lines. However, this picture could have been more pleasing to the eye had I moved my view more to the right. The tree is not the intersection of the lines. Look at this image to the left. Although interesting and colorful, it is poorly composed. Not one element falls at the intersection of the lines. The eyes do not naturally move to any of the objects or elements. This photo lacks focus. Make sure your elements fall within the intersection of those lines. Want to get started? Most DSLR or professional cameras have built-in grid lines in the viewfinder. However, cell phones do not. You must switch this feature on your camera settings. In the next section, I will show you how to get your grid lines on your camera viewfinder. How to get started with your cell phone. Adding grid lines on your iPhone is simple. Follow these steps to have the grid on your photos. Open the Settings app, tag Photos and Camera, or just Camera if you're using iOS 11 or later. Find Grid and toggle it on. You will now have the grid lines. These lines also appear when you take a picture in a vertical position. The same rules apply for vertical capture. This is how you enable grid lines on an Android phone. To enable Grid, go to Settings, System Apps, Camera, then toggle Grid to green to enable. Settings may vary. Look up your phone and how to add grid lines. Examples of photography and rule of thirds. All these photos were taken by me with an iPhone XS Max. These photos also follow the rule of thirds. Here we have Tlaquepaque, Mexico, Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, Tonalá, Mexico, and Greek soldiers in traditional clothing in Athens, Greece. I highly encourage you to start taking photos. Eventually, you will develop your own style and will want to print your photos. Hopefully, you learned something. I will make more tips and teach you more about photography. Stay tuned for the rule of odds and rule of symmetry.